What's up, everybody? Okay, do you guys know that even if we all ate the same and exercised the same, that we would all still look completely different? I'm Lacey Green, a super trainer with Body. That's BODI.com. And I'm telling you, this is something you need in your life. The app is about feeling amazing as we help you get life-changing results. That's called Health Esteem. Feeling good about yourself right now as you work on the person you are becoming using Body's easy-to-follow programs. Body isn't just some app. It's a day-by-day plan, and it's people, it's trainers, delicious meal planning, and even positive mindset experts. And Body features my program for beginners only, which you have to try even if you've never worked out a day in your life. And here's how I'll make it a total no-brainer. Join Body today and you can get 1 month free. That's a $29 value. A full free month just for joining today and letting me help you start your lifestyle transformation. I do not want you to miss this free month offer. Just go to body.com. That's body with an I.com.
A lot of people are saying Kwasi Kwarteng is getting fired, but that absolutely won't happen. But I will definitely acknowledge saying this next week if it does. I'm Harriet Langley-Swindon, and this is Non-Censored. Hello and welcome to another week of Non-Censored, where I share the best bits from my radio show. Usually I'd be joined with my producer Martin, but he's not here right now. He's left me a note saying he's got couples counselling, so make something up like a doctor's appointment. I don't really want that made public. So there you have it. Martin is at the doctor's, but he'll be back for more links next week. Now, it was a really wonderful show. There was, as always, stuff we just couldn't share with you. Elon Musk came on the show. We talked to him, but sadly we were using his Starlink system and we lost connection halfway through. We also had pop sensation MIA on to talk about the danger of vaccines, but sadly she kept trying to promote her record instead, which is really not why we booked her. I mean, She didn't read the brief, so again we had to cut that. But we've got all the most important stuff here still for you to listen to. We had Prime Minister Liz Truss back on the show. People were saying she's a bit down, but no, to me she always seemed like the same old unflappable Liz. But make your own mind up, that's what this show is about. Take a listen. Prime Minister, hello, how are you doing today?
Hello, Harriet. As every day of being your Prime Minister, yes. I'm doing extremely well.
Oh, wonderful. Now, let's start by talking about you had another sterling performance in PMQs. Only your second one, yet it was like you've been going for ages.
2 out of 2, 100% no notes for me, Liz Truss, the Prime Minister.
No notes. I don't think anyone would. I think you really gave Keir Starmer a run for his money.
He was on the ropes. I put him on notice.
Yes, indeed. Now, one of the things that you said in PMQs was that you definitely will not cut public spending. And now, Prime Minister, can you assure us of this? Because there has been some naysayers who suspect that you might U-turn on this later down the line.
Who are these naysayers? I've never met them. Show yourselves, cowards.
Yes, do you know what? I hope they're listening to this programme and I hope they're scared.
I can just feel their fear even though they don't exist. No notes. All good. Well done.
But Prime Minister, I mean, if I was to play devil's advocate, there has been talk of, a few U-turns that you have made. Obviously, there was the plans to axe the 45p top rate of income tax, and you were very emphatic that you would not be U-turning on this. You said it definitely wouldn't happen, and then it definitely did. So, I mean, what's going on here? Are you U-turning on these issues, or is it just the cut and thrust of politics?
As I said to my dynamic new Chancellor Kwasi, U-turn if you want to. I definitely won't ever. I won't do it. Liz Truss doesn't U-turn or make mistakes or do anything bad as your Prime Minister. It's good. No notes.
So is it your Chancellor then? Do you trust your Chancellor?
Yes.
Yes. Yes, so he was the one really who U-turned.
I've
Yes.
got to say that, Prime Minister, I just need to chip in and say I haven't always been the number one
Martin?
fan of Conservative. It's producer Martin. I haven't always been.
I thought it was. I heard that voice, and I thought someone wants to speak to me.
Oh, well, yeah, I do upon occasion enjoy a chat, and you're always very polite. And thank you again for coming on the show. I was just going to say that
don't have to
the
be.
Conservative policy isn't always something that I agree with. But I think some of these U-turns are actually good ideas. I think maybe that there's a problem with people thinking that U-turning is bad because, if you're driving down a road and you realise that, you're not going to be able to get over the bridge because the bridge
Yes, you
is on
keep
fire.
going.
Well, I that's one option, but you could just U-turn, couldn't you? I mean, it's a useful manoeuvre, a tool to
Martin,
have.
can you imagine some of the great works of this nation if the U-turn had happened? Imagine Thelma and Louise if at the end those women had U-turned. No, just keep going.
Well, they'd be alive. I mean, they'd be alive.
They live forever in our hearts. Liz Truss will do that. Queen of Hearts, Liz Truss, me, Prime Minister.
So in your opinion, a U-turn is never a good thing and never something you would do?
Correct. I never would. And my dynamic Chancellor can do what he likes. I don't care anymore. Do what you bloody like. Just don't even listen to me, whatever.
Prime Minister, do you feel like the population of the UK are letting down your policies?
Yes, here's what they do. They listen to the naysayers who don't exist, but the media are them, and they've never backed the Conservatives. I'm sure you agree. The British media never backs this government. And so what happens is the journalists who aren't real, they're just a media, they speak to the British public who get the wrong idea and they don't agree with me that everything I'm doing is correct, no notes. And it's bad for the country and it's bad for me, who all I wanted was to be Prime Minister and be on the cover of British Vogue. They're taking that away from me with their naysaying, but they're not real.
So it's the lefty mainstream media who you really hold accountable?
The Daily Mail, the Times, the Telegraph, the Sun. How many times have they backed Labour? All the times. Never once
I
backed
don't
Conservative ever. That's
know
true.
if that's always the case. Could I just ask, Prime Minister, how do you
Martin.
feel about Nadine Dorries? She's been a bit of a detractor of late of some of your policies. I thought maybe coming from the same team that might feel.
Yes, she was originally a supporter of you.
I've seen her appearances, and I have to say, I think some people are just messy bitches who love drama, and it's time to get on with the job.
There's some strong words there, yeah.
Prime Minister, now there has been talk about some Tory rebels who are trying to oust you and replace you with a sort of Penny Mordaunt, Rishi Sunak government. Now, James Cleverly has stepped up and he said, no, they mustn't do this. I mean, what are your thoughts on this? It must be so soon into your leadership. This must be a little disconcerting.
Yes, James, cleverly by name, cleverly by nature, has very cleverly told them to back their hell off. Just all they're interested in is not losing their seats. Well, I don't care.
That's all they're interested in.
Yes.
Prime Minister, are you okay?
Yes, everything's going very well. My position in the polls continues to grow. good. No notes. No notes.
Prime Minister, it's okay to be wrong sometimes. I mean, it's sort of less okay when you're in charge of a country's economy, but you are allowed to. I mean, sometimes I make mistakes. We all make mistakes. I think.
Well, maybe take your own advice, Martin, and realise that you're wrong about this specifically. But there's lots you're right about, Martin.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Prime Minister. I think that's almost the time that we have with you. Thank you so much for coming on again. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. It's also very flattering to receive those texts that you sent. As I told you before, I have a Nokia 3210, so I can't actually look at those pictures that you sent. But
you'll just have to use the most erotic part of the body, Martin, the brain.
Right. Okay.
Imagine them, hun. Imagine.
Right, well, on that delightful note, Prime Minister, thank you ever so much once again for coming on this show.
Thank you. Any time, please.
This week, our senior political correspondent, Eshaan Akbar, joined us once again to talk about the lack of nuance in modern politics. And I have to say, I really agree with that. You either love nuance or you're scum. Anyway, let's take a listen to this week's hot and spicy takeaway of the week. Well, it's time for our hot and spicy takeaway of the week, and I am joined, as always, by Eshaan Akbar, our senior political reporter. What is your hot and spicy takeaway of the week?
Well, my hot and spicy takeaway of the week is inspired by a political heavyweight, a certain Jacob Rees-Mogg, who I know Harriet are a big fan of. Yes.
Oh, I do. What an absolute charming Victorian old gentleman he is.
This week, he was on the radio, talking, of course, about this whole hoo-ha we've had about the economy. And he made a very wonderful point that made me think, actually, that is my hot and spicy takeaway of the week, which is that not everything is caused by the direct actions of the thing that you do affecting the thing that happens.
Sorry, can you explain this a bit more? So,
cause and effect. Is that what we're talking about?
Yes, effectively. Thank you, Martin. Let's just imagine a scenario where you have one of those, those quite fancy taps that can give you cold water and boiling hot water.
Oh, yes, very good.
At the same time.
So wonderful invention there.
Yes, they're very good, aren't they? Now, you may turn on the tap, and I don't know about you, but sometimes I don't always know which side the hot or the cold lever goes. So you may accidentally have the boiling hot tap on, and then if you put your hand in a bid to wash your hands and you scald yourself, that's not the fault of the tap, is it? It's your fault for not taking the necessary measures so as not to scald yourself. So Jacob Rees-Mogg this week said, the struggles of the economy cannot be directly attributed to the mini budget that was announced by our Chancellor, Kwasi Kwarteng. In fact, it's more to do with interest rates and a minor part of fiscal policy, which, of course, you and I both know has got nothing to do with money.
Sorry, Eshaan.
that sounds...
I feel like I have to ask the question. In this analogy, is Jacob Rees-Mogg the tap, or is he the hand?
That's a good question, actually.
In this analogy, Jacob Rees-Mogg is the drying rack. He's got nothing to do with the tap or the hand.
He does look a bit
right,
like
he's
the
the drying
rack, doesn't
rack.
he?
Yes. So there he is, just observing what's going on. And actually, if I may say so, I feel like Jacob Rees-Mogg is adding something that is sorely lacking in a lot of discourse around politics. And that, of course, is nuance. There he is saying, hold on a minute. Instead of saying, just because the Chancellor of the Exchequer, who's in charge of the money, announces a budget about the money, and then everyone is struggling, the money is struggling, that's not the fault of what the Chancellor said. There are other things affecting the money.
I love this way of thinking. I think it's so true because so often especially from what we've seen in the last few weeks, the government are getting blamed just because they've done things that have resulted in other things happening, when actually those things that have resulted in happening are not because the government have done things, but because of external forces. It's a bit like, Martin, when I was round yours and I threw a small stone at one of your children / dogs. They're very similar. Yes. And they got sort of upset. And
they have a similar energy, I suppose you could say.
Yeah.
Very yappy.
And they cried, very yappy. And I thought, no, this isn't my fault, actually. This isn't my fault. Yeah. No. What were you doing standing there in the first place?
I do remember that event because there was a lot of tears. And I think there is actually a comparison to what's currently going on with the government and the financial situation the country seems to be in. However, I mean, look, it seems to me like the government and Jacob Rees-Mogg are just trying to weasel their way out of taking responsibility. That's what it comes across. I mean, you can read...
No. You see, a Conservative government, as you and I both know, believe in small government. So what they're doing here is saying, look, if we govern, we have no direct impact on what actually happens. So we may not as well be here. What is the government? It's just a building full of people. The building isn't affecting the money. The building can't do anything about climate change. The building itself cannot do anything about, poverty. It's just a building. That's what the government is. So that's what Jacob Rees-Mogg is saying. He said, look, we're just in the building. If you don't want to be poor, stop coming to the building, because the building can't do anything about it. You have to.
Can I take you back to the delightful imagery you came up with earlier of Jacob Rees-Mogg being a drying rack? Because what I liked about that is it reminded me of Beauty and the Beast, when all the different furniture, they're all actually people.
The candelabra,
You've got the candelabra and the funny talking clock. So, and I think Jacob Rees-Mogg would make a charming drying rack, especially if he sang, because I think he'd sing very well. But what I want to know is, if he's the drying rack, what are the Anti-Growth Coalition?
So the Anti-Growth Coalition are very much the boiling hot water that comes out of the tap, because they are scolding anyone who interacts with it, and ultimately someone's chosen to put the lever that way. I'm not going to say who. I don't wish to, is it the left? I don't know. I don't know. But there they are. And so the boiling hot water scolds anyone who interacts with it. That's why you shouldn't even touch it.
Yeah. So therefore, once again, we've proven that whoever switched on the tap, it's not their fault.
It's not their fault. It's our fault for putting our hands into it.
Yes.
So, sorry, just to get this right, it's never anyone's fault that anything that they do happens. Is that what we're going with?
Not unless you're boiling hot water, in which case,
I'm just going to say
exercise
one name.
A bit of.
I'm going to say one name, and I'm going to ask you whether or not you still think that this person isn't responsible for anything. Jeremy Corbyn.
Here's the thing with Jeremy Corbyn is he's not operates in a slightly different way, you see.
Right, yes, yes. And then then we change what.
Because ultimately, you see, that the tap, the drying rack, the sink, it all has to be installed onto a kitchen cabinet, right? You can't just have it floating there. So Jeremy Corbyn is a kitchen cabinet.
Oh,
I would have thought he was more of a tea cosy.
No. He's very much a kitchen cabinet in that it's just there, this solid, immovable object on which other things get placed. And because he's there, those other things, they exist because he's there in the first place. So if there was no kitchen cabinet on which to place the sink and the tap and the drying rack, we wouldn't have those problems in the first place.
Wait, so is the kitchen built on Jeremy Corbyn?
Yes, and this is why...
Oh, God.
I mean, this is very confusing. I'm not entirely sure I understand what's caused the crash of the economy, but I certainly am thinking about renovating my kitchen.
Well, Martin,
So
it looks like it was Jeremy Corbyn.
The cabinet has caused the crash of the economy. If you just,
Yes,
the
Jeremy
cabinet.
Corbyn, and then things on top of it.
Yes.
Jeremy Corbyn, helped by the Anti-Growth Coalition.
Yes.
Now, last week, the Northern Irish Minister, Steve Baker, very graciously acknowledged that he and his fellow Brexiteers could have behaved better since 2016. So we got MEP Gerard Donnelly on the line to see if he would accept this, let's call it an apology, or if he was going to be a typical ungrateful rubbish Eurocrat. Let's take a listen. Gerard Donnelly, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you very much for having me.
Steve Baker has very kindly apologised to Ireland and Brussels. He held his hands up and he said that they'd not shown respect to the legitimate interests of Ireland or the EU. And it was time that we went forward, our two countries, as closest partners and friends. I mean, that's lovely, isn't it? Can we all agree now? Water under the bridge, move on to the big stuff.
I mean, we can certainly agree that's nice of him.
Yes,
it's,
very nice.
It's good to be polite and kind, and
Yes.
apologising is a good thing. But we should remember it doesn't actually change any of the things they did.
Why
all
not?
the things they did. Well, because he's saying sorry and still continuing to do the bad things. So it's like apologising while slapping us in the face repeatedly.
No, sorry, Gerard. If I started slapping you in the face, it would very much change the nature of my slapping you in the face if I started then apologising. I think then you'd just be like, oh, okay. Oh, all right. It's different, isn't it?
I don't know, because words can be received easily, but a hearty old slap in the face is a different thing altogether. I'm still left red-cheeked and in pain, and that's not my cup of tea. Some people are into that,
and
not for
in
me.
pain with an apology.
It is confusing as well, isn't it? It's sort of like a bit of a salty compliment when someone says, "Oh, you look nice."
Yeah.
For today.
Thank you. It's like, why'd you sound so surprised?
Hard to receive the true benefit of the compliment when also getting the slap in the face. I think that happens
listen,
quite a
boys,
lot. Certainly to me.
Can I stop you there? So Steve Baker said that we have to bring some humility to the situation. Now, do you think that really by not accepting his apology and moving on, you're not bringing humility to the situation, are you?
Well, I would argue we had the humility covered right from the off, because we were chatting through it, even though you've gave us this bit of a pain in the ass, and we're like, okay, let's work this out, despite this being, entirely your fault.
Sorry, no.
And,
Rewind. What do you mean entirely?
Well, I mean, the EU didn't vote for Brexit. You know what I mean?
What?
We didn't kick you out.
We
didn't vote to kick you out.
We voted for Brexit.
Well, not
we
not
knew
all
what
of
we
us
were
voted
getting,
for it.
and we want it delivered. A large percentage, Martin.
Yeah, well, no,
and
absolutely.
we're waiting for that to be delivered. And it's been very hard with, no offence to your people, Gerard, of some of Ireland getting all sort of silly about borders in the sea, all these sort of little things. I'm sorry. I am sorry. I apologise. But
that doesn't
sort
sound
it
like
out. Get
apology.
over yourselves.
See, that's
No,
a
it's-
perfect.
it's an apology.
That's
when-
a salty apology. There, that's what we just. It's a very good
Yeah,
example.
tone is very important. If you say that, oh, sorry, like a teenager slamming the door in his mom's face.
Sorry, who's being a teenager now? If you're talking about tone, he apologised. Now let's get on with getting rid of this silly little Irish border in the sea, and let's get Brexit done.
Yeah, but like you voted for it. That's just very the power of words.
We
Listen to
voted
that.
for it.
You voted for this.
We voted for it.
We were all having
voted
a
for
great
it.
time, and he's apologising. He's done some crazy things. Like he's after several years of just kind of really slapping, literally slapping us in the face. I know I used that. That sounded like it was a metaphor earlier, but But Steve Baker did actually hop off at Dublin Airport, knock on my door and slap me in the face several times.
Wow.
Well, I'm sorry, he probably had his reasons for doing that.
And he was saying, get Brexit done, as he said it.
That's a lot for anyone to stomach, isn't
No,
it?
Gerard, listen, we all got very heated over Brexit. You know, some of us did some crazy things. Some of us set fire to our neighbour's post box because they called us a Nazi for voting to leave. We all did things that we regret. And so what if Steve Baker physically assaulted you?
But like he
that's all he did. Did he do anything else to you? No.
Well, yeah, he did that with a long kind of sort of artificial arm for some reason as well. He had that so he was a few feet away as if he didn't want to approach me and touch me. This was after getting a couple of aides to I don't know what the technical term is, but jock my trousers.
Yes, like a debagging.
Yeah, thank you. It was a technical debagging, and he was slapping me saying, get Brexit done. And he said something along the lines of, what's the problem, Seamus? I'll buy you a few pints and we'll all be laughing about this tomorrow. Something in and around those lines. This was before what I believe he thought was a peace offering. He had those aides stuff a bag of potatoes through my letterbox. And it's a very thin letterbox, so it was essentially mash by the time it came through on the other side. And we're not much of a mash house. And also, there's some connotations there, like any other vegetable. And I might have been like, oh, fair enough. But that's the one that really ticks people off, And it was a hell of a mess to clean up. And to be fair, he did stuff some gravy through there afterwards. So it was approaching a Sunday roast. But still, I didn't ask for this. Much like I didn't ask for Brexit.
And if we were to say that, the power of the apology, we don't want to undermine it. It's always good to apologise for things. What level of apology would be enough to especially the whole let's call it what it is, anti-Irish vegetable assault.
Yeah, but probably he needs to go into specifics because that's just the start of it. He said he also promised to annex Dublin at one point, and I don't know.
That was probably fair at the time, though, wasn't it? We all wanted to annex Dublin at one time or another.
Yeah, well, you did, though. You actually did. That's the thing. If you go back far enough, about 100 years ago.
God, sorry, I'm not interested in this history, Lark. It doesn't make any sense to me, and it has no relevance to what's going on in the world today at all. I'm sorry.
Well, this is part of the problem here. You see, the kind of ooh, whoopsie, with the old apology. Some would say you're about 800 years too late.
No, again, we don't like anti-empire sentiment on this show. This is the show where you can say anything, but not that. Okay? But Jerry, you don't mind me calling you Jerry.
Okay.
The thing is, all these kind of litany of problems that you're laying at Steve Baker's door because he, assaulted you and threw vegetables at you and all these sort of things and threatened to annex Dublin. Don't you think it'd be a lot easier if you just accepted his apology? Then you could retrospectively look at all that and blame the EU. And then we'd all be on the same page.
I'm confused. I just don't know. It's very much him. He got the ball rolling, with the whole Brexit spiel. And he's like, whoops, sorry about that. But let's all get on together and fix it. But we didn't do this. You know what I mean?
Well, he is the dark angel of Brexit, and sometimes he oversteps the mark, but he's got a job to do.
Well, I just feel like he's gotten, the apology is just a start,
Well, Jerry, thank you for coming on the show. I'm so glad that we now agree it's time to move on and look at the true enemy, which is the EU.
Okay, just to clarify, I didn't agree to that. Please don't cut off this bit of me clarifying.
Next time on a very spooky fine dining podcast, the season 1 finale, TGI Fridays the 13th. Oh, you betcha, pineapple's gonna hit the fan as Michael's son Juicy, or in this episode, Juice son Voorhees, goes on a murderous rampage, and no one is safe. It gets real spooky, it gets real bloody, and not everyone's gonna make it to the end of the episode. Who will live, who will die? Listen to Fine Dining, the search for the most mediocre restaurant in America, break down a trip to TGI Fridays based on the atmosphere, the service, and the food, and try not to be scared to death. Hear the thrilling finale of Fine Dining, Wednesday, October 25th, wherever you get your podcasts.
Now, our guest this week was actor, columnist, broadcast journalist Nicola Thorp. She's held her own against a few titans of media in her time, such as Piers Morgan, but she's not faced the Emily Maitlis of the right before. And by that I am, of course, talking about myself. How does she fare? Let's find out. So we have Toki Lefty on a panel show with us, Nicola Thorp. Hello, and today you're our token lefty.
Hello, Harriet. So lovely to be here.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you. I will say, though, producer Martin, he's not a lefty, but he is a sort of wishy-washy, centrist. So I don't want you to feel like you're completely, in with the right thinking right
How
wingers.
boring, Martin.
Yes.
Pick a side and stick to it.
Well, okay,
I know
fair
this-
enough.
I say this to him all the time. But Nicola, the reason why I start bringing that up is because you say, you're the token lefty, but aren't you supposed to be against tokenism? What's going on here?
Look, it's a shame that on the largely right-wing media circuit, lefties are seen as tokenists. I'd actually think that lefties are in a far larger majority in this country, but we just don't get platformed in the same way, don't create as much conflicting content because we tend to just have a nice chat and agree with each other.
Well, actually, Nicola, that's not quite true because the silent majority is the right-thinking right-wingers. The loud majority, the please shut up, you're upsetting me, this is too much, why are you going on about this, is traditionally the left-wingers.
Well, do you ever think that the silent majority, as you've described them, are silent because most of them don't actually exist except for in your head for your own intent and purposes? No. Okay.
No, they're silent because they feel like they can't speak.
Right.
They can't say what they feel because they are continually oppressed by this sort of wokey, lefty, Marxist disease. If you don't mind me calling it a disease, that is taking over our media, our airwaves, our children, our sports, our history,
everything,
our arts,
wow,
our fashion, our I could go on. Martin's probably got the full list as our producer.
There is a long list, but I don't think we need to go through
Yes.
it all. I think most of our listeners are aware of what we think the woke lefty intelligentsia have tried to take over.
Yeah, you've
And what I do
completed
is
that entire bingo card there, Harriet, haven't you?
Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you. Yes. Well, I do, Nicola, afterwards, if you want to join my newsletter, what I do is I do reiterate that every week. There's a list at the end of what the wokies are taking over, and I add to it every week.
Wow. Just
This
over and
week,
over again.
The new edition
Yes,
is
just over and over again.
croissants, apparently.
Yes,
Croissants.
very well. The wokiness, because you used to have just a good butter croissant, but now you have almond croissant and chocolate covered croissant. This is not. What is this?
It's culinary
disgusting.
progress, Harriet, and it's absolutely delicious. I'm so sorry if you're stuck in the old ways of the butter croissant. I can say a chocolate-covered almond croissant is delightful.
I resent the phrase old ways because I prefer to see it as traditional British ways.
Oh, the French croissant, yes. Very, very traditionally British.
Well, I think you'll find, don't quote me on this, but I'm pretty sure that the French croissant was invented here in England. And then with the French Revolution, one of the things they did, as well as sort of, starting all this kind of lefty nonsense, is they took over our croissants.
Wow. Well, I can only apologise on behalf of the left for stealing your continental breakfast and making it European.
Let's start, Nicola. Obviously, you've done many things. You're an actor. You've written for various columns, but also you got famous, didn't you? Because you sort of said high heels are sexist. Wasn't that it?
That's right, Harriet. Yeah, back in 2016, I was working as a receptionist And I was told that in order to keep my job, I had to wear 2 to 4 inch heels to the office every day. And I said, absolutely not. I want to wear flat shoes. And I got fired. So I then challenged that and took it to Parliament, actually. And there was a parliamentary inquiry into sexist dress code policies. And I'm happy to say that an awful lot of dress codes got changed as a result of that. I mean, Harriet, you wouldn't want to be wearing 4 inch heels every single day in order to keep your job, would you?
No, but if I expect receptionists to be honest. Right. I mean, I've earned the right to occasionally wear flat shoes, though I have to say I don't, because I think it's important as a woman to look your best. Mm-hmm. It's pleasing on the eye for the menfolk, and that's where we have our power, you see, as a woman. And I think what better way to show your power than by someone sort of saying you have to wear this and then you fulfilling that duty.
I see. So a woman's place in the workplace is to look pretty, be 4 inches taller, look the part. And that's, you see women's power as being very much connected to the soles of her feet.
No, look, I'm not saying it's women's place. I'm not one of these, women should stay in the home thing. But I just think we've got to accept where our power is. And our power is in how we can totter and walk. Because I think you can really tell a lot by if a woman can walk properly. And the way to tell if she can walk properly is if she's wearing a good high heel. It shows balance, and that shows balance of thought.
So interesting, Harriet. You sound exactly like my manager who fired me on the day. And I actually argued that I was capable of doing exactly the same job as my male counterpart, who was wearing flat shoes and no makeup at the time.
Yes, but come on, you can't ask a man to wear makeup and heels. They might think he's gay or something.
Right. Well, I don't even know where to begin unpacking how problematic that sentence was, Harriet.
But do you worry if you sort of carry on pushing this kind of agenda, women are going to stop being able to get men?
Well, I think that's what people said about the suffragettes over 100 years ago was, well, where is it going to stop?
Well, the suffragettes were famously unmarried, weren't they?
I can't recall, Harriet, their marital status. However, I don't think that we could look back 100 years and say that they were simply pushing an agenda. They were just looking for basic human rights, which was the right to vote. I'm looking for the human right to work in comfort and safety without a 4-inch heel on my feet.
I just worry about where it will end. I mean, next you're going to be saying that women can have hairy armpits.
Do you know what? It's none of my business whether or not a woman wants hairy armpits in the workplace, nor is it my business if a man wants to shave his armpits. I don't see how that could affect somebody's job.
I don't like that either.
No.
I think that's very unpleasant.
Not a fan of a hairy female armpit, Harry?
No, it's horrible. It's just sort of very triggering of my Aunt Helen, who was a sort of hippie. She'd come round with her big hairy armpit. She'd go on about Germaine Greer, and she'd bring round these flapjacks I like flapjacks, but they were just unpleasant to eat. And I thought, people talk about being triggered, and I think it is an overused word, but I do find hairy armpits triggering for this reason.
Well, perhaps I would provide a trigger warning next time one of my hairy armpitted friends is in your vicinity.
Yes, actually, if you could. I mean, yes, producer Martin.
No, I was just chipping in because to say I had to shave my armpits recently for my swimming club, local swimming club. They insisted that it might make me a bit faster and shave my legs as well.
Fantastic.
Is that sorry, producer Martin, is that a necessary interjection?
Well, no, I just thought it'd give a bit of context from the sort of the male gaze to sort of see what
when you give interjections, it's to offer facts or things that I might have missed.
Okay, one fact. I think that maybe what your auntie brought round was a garibaldi. It's often confused.
What?
Often confused for a flapjack, but isn't quite as enjoyable a garibaldi.
Is that it, Martin? Can I carry on?
I absolutely love it when a man interjects to talk about how his experience of shaving is somehow relevant to a woman's.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Nicola.
I personally find it very upsetting every time Martin interjects, but, I had trouble getting a producer for this show, and we are technically related. Anyway, Nicola, I've been reading some of your articles. Very interesting. There's a bit of a theme, isn't there? There's a bit of a theme. It's a bit of, what can I get upset about discrimination this week? I mean, you talk about accent discrimination and doctors not doing women's issues. How do you decide what to get angry at?
I just wake up and think, I just pick them randomly out of the air, Harriet. I think, what is it? Women? Is it going to be race? Is it going to be classism? And I go, this is what I'm going to be angry about today. I'm joking. These are things that
That's how I
know.
do it.
I can imagine that is a technique that is often used by the right, I suspect. No, I actually do believe these things, believe it or not. I think that improvements in women's health are a good thing. I don't think you could argue about that. Also, I'm not actually angry. I don't wake up every morning feeling furious. I do read things in the paper that go, do you know what? This is something that should be addressed and needs to be changed and spoken about. And then I write about it. And then unfortunately, people like yourself think that I've got my knickers in a twist and I'm a classic complaining, wokey woman who is never satisfied.
Well, you are a classic complaining, wokey woman. I mean, that's your USP, isn't it, really?
Do you think I'm coming across quite angry, Harriet? I like to think I'm quite rational and reasonable.
You said that in quite an aggressive way.
Okay.
Of, yes.
Right.
So I mean, maybe sort of what's your tone?
Okay.
Just from one woman to another.
Thank you.
Nicola, if you don't mind me jumping in, we did a poll with our listeners and we wanted to see what your opinion was on this.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of people, you often deal with people that are having a raw deal, people that aren't being treated the way that they should do. So who would win in a who's got it worst off between these people? Okay, so we've got, first up, women.
Right.
Second of all, the homeless. And third of all, the Ukraine. So they've all got it bad. We're not saying they haven't got it bad, but who do you think has got it worst?
You have to rate it. You could rate them out of... what are we saying, Martin? Rate out of 10?
That's the game. That's how the game works.
Or just order it.
Okay. Well, they're very broad. The top one, I would say, women, a very broad category. And second was just the homeless.
The homeless, yeah.
And then Ukraine. Well, I would say right at the top, considering the current climate, I would say Ukrainians.
Yeah.
After that,
Yes.
The homeless.
Yeah.
And
Right.
then women. But obviously being... Yeah.
Well, no, it's just quite clever because there are, of course, women and the homeless in Ukraine, and some women are homeless. And
precisely.
Then,
So it would be Ukrainian homeless women right at the top. And then it would be homeless women. And then right at the bottom, Ukrainian women, but who aren't homeless, perhaps some Ukrainian women in the UK.
We had a similar response from our audience, except for number one was Liz Truss.
Yes.
I think she's getting a bit of a hard time at the moment. So.
She's having a very
She is getting a bit of a hard
I would actually
time.
agree that she's having a difficult time. I would argue that she's not having a more difficult time than anyone Ukrainian or homeless.
Nicola, I do think it's interesting. I mean, usually Martin's interjections are very pointless and irritating, but I thought he made some good points here because actually it was quite exposing because it showed that actually you kind of agree that women's issues are a low priority. So maybe you should stop fannying around with sort of women in their tampons and women in their health when there's a war on.
Well, there's always a war on somewhere, Harriet. And I would argue that in times of war, it is actually women who suffer the most. Often rape and sexual violence can be tools used, weapons of war against women, and women suffer the most. And I'm sure you're probably going to say that they don't fight on the front line. And it's the men who have to stay behind.
They don't fight on the front
women
line.
and children lose out the most when it comes to war. So it's still relevant, even in wartime.
And homeless people really should just get a job, shouldn't they?
I don't think it's that easy, Harriet. And I would also argue that, for the homeless population, if you are also female, there are added difficulties and vulnerabilities that are involved in sleeping rough or not being able to find a stable accommodation.
But Nicola, if I got homeless, I'd just go and stay at my sister and Martin's house.
Well,
I don't see why everyone can just do
not
that.
everybody.
We do have a spare room, but it would be quite tricky at the moment. Lucy, our dog's not feeling well, so I really hope that you don't get...
Well, Martin, I'm not homeless, am I? So I'm not going to go and live at your house.
It wouldn't be an ideal weekend. Of course,
and if I did, I would have to have Lucy removed, as I don't like a smelly dog.
Right.
Well, Nicola, thank you so much. I think we've probably talked about all we need to talk about, unless there's anything particular you want to, I don't know, raise or plug or something.
No, nothing to plug my end. Mm-hmm. I just wondered, I've always wanted to ask somebody on because a question I always get asked by people like yourself is, are you just pretending to be left wing for the money? And I'm not. I genuinely actually do believe what comes out of my mouth. And I just wanted to ask you, Harriet.
Is it sort of deluded?
Yeah, no, sure. I'm sure you'd see it like that. But I wanted to ask you, has there ever been a point in your career or on a daily basis or an hourly basis where you just see an issue and you see pound signs and go, do you know what? I'm just going to say something controversial too. Because I imagine it happens.
No.
I imagine that's sort of your business model.
Never at all. Do you know what? I never do. I look through the news and I think, what pressing thing must I talk about that won't excite people in the wrong way, but does need to be spoken about? You know, like a sort of, like I don't know, sort of the wokey left doing awful things. I'm just delivering my view of the world to the people, and overcoming huge obstacles like facts.
Well, one more question before we finish, if I may. How do you sleep at night?
Oh, thank you. Very well. I read a book. At the moment, I'm getting through Nadine Dorris's collection. Then I have hot chocolate made for me by my husband, and I put on a bit of music, and I sleep. I sleep very well.
That's all I needed.
There's usually a few sort of texts, quite late night texts for work that I have to do before we start recording as well. So that, I think, gets it off. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Martin. Yeah. All right. So that's the show. Martin's not here to tell you to subscribe, so I will, but I really don't understand it. So just, give us 10 stars on iTunes or something. Thank you to Rosie Holt, Brendan Murphy, Eshaan, Akbar, Sooz, Kempner, Seán, Burke, Ed Morrish, and Nicola Thorp. You'll hear me next week for some more Non-Censored.